Okay, hello, welcome back to ZoyncTV. I'm Andrew Weir, and today we're going to look at some unwrapping and texturing of human clothing. So that's going to include marking the seams, looking at some texture paint, and then looking at how we can add an image texture to the shape. And what we're going to do is we're going to firstly look at a few different things to do with what this shape is and how we can get it set up to mark the seams, because you can have some confusing shapes when you get around to creating some more advanced clothing. So if I'm supposing you have your own clothing, but if you did want this clothing, there's a link in the description to a tutorial series that will let you create it. And so but we're looking at texturing, so I kind of suppose you have your own clothing, and it's probably not a coat or anything like this. It's probably, you could have some armor or something, and it gets a little bit more advanced than that. So what I'm going to do is mention some general stuff about how we can mark the seams properly and unwrap that, and hopefully it will lead to you being able to unwrap whatever kind of clothing that you have in front of you. And so, firstly, this isn't how my mesh actually looks like. This has got a subdivision surface which I can just remove because it's better to apply the seams with the less amount of vertices, and then you can still subdivide it later if you wanted to. And then we've got smooth shading, and we'll change that to flat just while we do the unwrapping and so on. Makes it a little bit easier to see. And I've currently, when I do subdividing and smooth shading, you'll notice a small glitch. If I go smooth, it's a glitch here. That's just to do with how I've modelled it, and the way that it's connected is a little bit messed up. So I could fix this right now, but all it is you need to change how the face there is connected to the rest of the thing. But it shouldn't affect the actual unwrapping or anything, so I'll leave it how it is. And what we're going to do is we can see that we've got a collar here, which is kind of separate to the rest of the shape, although it's part of the same material. And then we've got the whole body around here with a bit down here, which is all part of the same thing, so we can keep that how it is. But when we're marking the seams, we're going to have to go around this here, the collar. So you'll kind of see what I'm getting at when we get further along, and eventually we're going to have to take it off the shape, just kind of like briefly, and then we'll put it back together with the original object, and we'll unwrap the whole thing as one piece of paper. Which is how a professional character would be done anyway, because no matter what clothing or whatever your character is made out of, every texture that you're going to apply to shapes, it'll all be made on the one image, which I can't really show you at the moment because I've only got one item of clothing. But if you've got more items of clothing, if you make them all the same object, once you've finished unwrapping them individually, and then unwrap them together, and arrange it so it uses up all the space, then that's the professional way to do it. And we're going to look at a few ways of fixing the shapes and so on. But at the moment I'll ignore that we've got the collar there, and we're just going to look at how to unwrap this lower body part and the arm. And if you look at your clothing that you're wearing at the moment, if it's a t-shirt or a shirt, then you'll notice the seam goes across your shoulder, down here, about there. Then it'll reach to the arm, because your clothing's been made out of one flat piece of cloth anyway. It comes to your arm, and then it goes round the arm like that on the ring loop there. And then my shirt goes under the arm, which makes it a lot better because then you don't see the seam on the outside of the arm. So what we can do is we can select that part there, press Ctrl E, which will bring you all this setting stuff here, which is probably worth looking at. But we're interested in marking the seams, which is just applying cuts for it to be cut from into one solid shape. And so we're going to cut there, and you'll see that it appears red. And then, as I said, across the top of the shoulder there is another one, and this is where the collar gets a bit in the way, and we only want to go to like where the collar starts. So I'm going to press Ctrl E again, mark another seam. So We see the kind of result we got there so far. And then I'm going to take it underneath and do the other seam down the arm here. Mark seam. I marked the sharp then, I'm not too sure what they are, but we want to mark seam. And that should be okay. And we can now change this to the scene up here. We can change it to, there should be a UV editing there. And that will give us a better view of this. Select the whole shape by pressing A. We've only got half of it at the moment, so you know it's okay. And press U to unwrap, and you'll see the kind of result we get. This is the arm, the sleeve that's been completely cut off, and as you can see, it's not very smooth. So you might want to fix that a bit later, which we will. And then you can see this is the body, which is kind of okay along here. It's fine, and then we reach this part here, which is where the collar's connected and the buttons would probably be. So it's kind of getting a bit messy around here, and we've got a cut along there, but it's joined by the collar still. So we're going to have to separate this collar now, and I'm going to speed it up because I've got to select the entire collar. But you'll see what I'm doing, and I'm just selecting each part all the way up here, cutting it off, and I'll show you afterwards what my result is. Okay, so I've selected what I want, and what I'm going to do with this now is I'm just going to press Y, and that will rip it off all the area that I want. So I bring this upwards now, and we can see what we've got left, and that's just the inside of everything that I had selected. And all that means is now when I press A to unwrap all, we can see in the UV editing view that we've got a perfect body outline part there, which is connected to this bit here. If I press, it's connected to this bit here, that's what we've got, and it shows that like that. And I select the collar, and we can press Ctrl L and see that is not so perfect, but it's separate to the rest of the shape, so it's okay for now. And what we're probably going to have to do with this is just cut it up a little bit more with seams to get a better result. So let's take a look at what we've got here, and it's probably best to take a look at it in the default mode, and we can see that it's probably okay for me to cut it here, I'm going to say, making that part of the collar separate, because I think that it messes up a bit at this joint. So I'm going to press Ctrl E, mark another seam, and you can do a bit of trial and error, because once we go back into the UV editing, select the whole thing, unwrap, we can see that that's kind of a lot better. This part here, if I press Ctrl L in this mode, Ctrl L, and if you don't know how to do stuff in this mode, I'm going to be going through that in the basics of texturing soon after this video, so it might be out already. And what we're going to do is we're just going to select that, and I'm going to move it away so that we get a better result there. And we could clean this up. I'll give you a vague kind of way that we can clean it up, and that's just if we rotate this like that, we can, I mean, it's probably okay at the moment, and if we want to see how this is actually projected onto the shape, what we can do is we can go to new image, that size is okay, color is okay, alpha, and we want UV grid, which just means that it's going to project some squares onto our shape, which I can press OK with, and there are the squares with the random symbols, making it a little bit harder to see our actual unwrap, but it's okay for now. And we can change this to texture mode, and we can now see that on our shape. So texture mode, object mode just so we can see a little bit better. And we can see where the seams are, so we can see there's a seam there, obviously not going to blend very well with the rest of the shape. Seam down there, not going to blend too well. Seam underneath that nobody's really going to notice. And then the rest of the unwrap is okay. And what you'd be looking out for when you're looking at this is if it was incorrectly unwrapped or not very well done, these cubes would be either stretched randomly or you know, bent out of shape from how it should be. And right now they're all okay, so there's no point me straightening it out, because if I did, just go into object mode, edit mode, and we can see our things here. If I select that loop there, press W to align on the x-axis, I've straightened it out, and that is must be the top. See the difference here? Yeah. Look at the top of the shirt here. If I press W and line it on the X, we can see that those squares there have been stretched and now they're out of shape. If you wanted to fix that, you'd have to move it back on the X-axis, and now it's looking pretty much okay, but we're going to have to work that out for the rest of the whole shape. So if we did want to straighten all these out, we'd have to make sure that all the cubes you know, aren't bent out of shape, because when you apply the texture, and if it were all stretched cubes, then what that would mean is that the texture that you apply will also be stretched. So how it is now, I'm going to keep it like that. You can stretch it and fix it by looking at these cubes. And what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the texture paint mode. So we need to change that into paint mode on both of them. Paint mode changed there, and we can change it into paint mode here, and that means that we can now colour in this shape either on the mesh or on the 2D. And I'm going to look at the 2D first. I'm going to make it dark blue, so I'll change it to blue here. Okay, so I'm going to start colouring it in, and on the texture, the 2D texture, it's appearing a bit dark, and I don't think, and it's not affecting the actual shape. As we can see here, there's no dark area. It's just something wrong with the actual texturing that's done. And this is all basic stuff, so if you want a more advanced texture, you'd have to go into Photoshop or GIMP and just do it properly. That's a bit tedious, I just outlined it, and you don't necessarily need to do that because there's nothing over here to be affected. So I'm going to change the radius of this, and I'm just going to colour it in a lot faster. Again, I'm going to have a basic tutorial on how to work this out and do the texture paint mode after this video. I'll be making it, and hopefully you'll get a bit more understanding there if you don't understand it already. But in this mode we can see what's happening, and we see that we've textured both of these. So next I'm going to go for a green, and it's not going to be the most good looking coat ever, but I'm going to colour in this in green. And I'm just going to quickly cover the whole thing, and we're going to see where the actual seams are, because you'll see how the seams are going to affect it now that we've split it up like this. And there we go, I've got some more textures over there, I've got a texture over here, they're a little bit more advanced than this, let's pretend. And we can see a clear seam in between them both. So, what you can do is you can paint directly onto the shape where the seam isn't a problem. There's no point, there's no seam like problem when you paint onto the shape, as you'll see here. So I'll start painting. It's a lot weaker on this side, so I'm going to turn the strength to full. And we can see that when I was painting on it like that, it's coloured. It's colouring that seam in, covering it up, which you could do on your actual shape. Just cover it up, and we can see how that's being affected here. And it's just giving it a green outline like this, making it less obvious that there is a cut there. And that's how we can kind of fix that, just applying maybe like a stitch effect just to the edge of our texture here, and we can see that that, has faded it together. And you're going to have to cover things up like that, or have a perfectly looping texture, which I'm not going to actually go through how to do textures, but what we can do now is we can go image and save as image, which would only save if I save it to my desktop. It will only save the image without the lines on there. So I'm opening it up at the moment. That should be any second. So as we can see, there's no lines on this shape, which is what kind of annoying if you were to be texturing this, because you have to remember where everything is. And the way we can fix that is go back to Blender, and what I'm going to need to do is close this texture. And what we can do in edit mode is go to UVs and export UV layout. So I'm going to export this UV layout to my desktop as well, which it should have done. So let's see. And there it is. We can see that I've got a nicer texture here, and when I'm actually doing this, if I bring this into GIMP or Photoshop, I can easily colour this in and texture it in a more advanced way, which you kind of need to learn the software to do that, and I'm not going to take you through the software, so it's probably best that we end here. And if you didn't understand anything there, go back and check some of my other videos to do with texturing, and hopefully you'll have a better understanding of what we can do from this point and what we can do with the texture paint mode, because you can also do image painting and so on to make your textures look a lot better. But that's okay for now, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I helped you. If you've got any questions, just put them down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.